Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, I'm going to share an incredible story with you. It's about how a sport beloved by millions around the world was born almost by accident on a cold winter day in 1891. It happened thanks to the ingenuity of a physical education teacher who solved a seemingly trivial problem. I'm talking about basketball, of course. Its origins are much more fascinating than you might imagine. It wasn't a natural evolution of other sports, nor did it arise from popular tradition. It was literally invented in 2 weeks by one man. Get ready, because this is the story of James Naismith and how he changed the world of sports forever. It is the freezing winter of 1891 in Springfield, Massachusetts. The city is located in the heart of New England, where winter is brutal. There are sub-zero temperatures, heavy snow, and biting winds. For the students of the Springfield International YMCA Training School, a school that trained physical education instructors for Christian youth associations, this meant one thing: no outdoor sports. That's where the problem arose. The students were energetic young people, many of whom were athletes who played American football in the fall and baseball in the spring. However, during the winter months, they were forced to perform boring gymnastics exercises in the gym. Morale was low. The students were bored, restless, and undisciplined. Some began to skip classes. The situation was getting out of hand. The school's director, Luther Halsey Gulick, was concerned. He needed a solution quickly. He called a meeting with his instructors and issued a challenge: invent a new game that could be played in the gym during the winter. It had to be interesting enough to motivate the students, yet safe and suitable for indoor spaces. 2 instructors tried and failed. Their attempts to adapt outdoor sports, such as rugby and soccer, to indoor spaces were disastrous. They were too violent and dangerous and impossible to control in a confined space. Then it was James Naismith's turn. Who was James Naismith? Understanding this man is fundamental to understanding basketball. Naismith was born in 1861 in a small farming community in Ontario, Canada. Orphaned at an early age, he was raised by an uncle. He was a sturdy, athletic boy who loved outdoor games. However, he was also deeply religious and intellectually curious. After studying theology at McGill University in Montreal, he realized his true calling was to work with young people through sports and physical education, not to preach from the pulpit. He believed that sports could develop not only the body but also character, moral values, and team spirit. This philosophy led him to the YMCA Training School in Springfield, where he became an instructor. At 30 years old, Gulick entrusted him with a class of 18 unruly students, the most difficult in the school. Gulick gave him an ultimatum: invent a new game in 2 weeks, or the class is a lost cause. 14 days to create something completely new. Most people would have given up. But Naismith was different. He had a unique background, with experience in multiple sports and training in theology, philosophy, and youth psychology. Above all, he had a scientific way of thinking. He didn't want to simply adapt an existing game. He wanted to start from scratch and create something new. Naismith locked himself in his office and started thinking. What were the essential elements of a good game? First, there had to be a ball. The most popular games, football, soccer, and rugby, used the ball. The ball was a universal element that made the sport exciting and unpredictable. But what kind of ball? A football was too small and difficult to handle indoors. Something bigger and easier to control was needed. A soccer ball seemed perfect. Second, the game had to minimize physical contact. In the confined space of a gym, a violent game like rugby would be dangerous. Naismith had witnessed his colleagues' failures. He had to find a way to make the game competitive yet nonviolent. His brilliant insight was to prohibit running while holding the ball, unlike rugby where players can run with it. Players could only pass or bounce the ball while moving. This would automatically reduce violent contact. Third, the goal had to be horizontal instead of vertical, like in soccer. Why? Naismith reasoned that if the goal were at ground level, the strongest players could simply shoot hard from any distance. However, by placing the goal high up, skill and accuracy would be favored over brute force. Furthermore, a horizontal goal would force players to shoot with the bow, which is a more elegant and less aggressive movement. Fourth, everyone had to be able to play. It was not to be a sport only for exceptional athletes. The beauty of the new game had to lie in strategy, teamwork, and tactical intelligence, not just physical prowess. With these principles in mind, Naismith was ready to create his game. It was December of 1891. Naismith entered the gym with his plan. He asked the janitor, Pop Stebbins, for 2 square boxes to use as goals. "I don't have any boxes," Stebbins replied, "but I have 2 old peach baskets." "Perfect. 2 wicker peach baskets." Stebbins hung them on the balcony railing around the gym at a height of about 3 meters. This size, chosen almost at random from the gym structure, would become the standard, 10 feet, 3.05 meters. Naismith had written 13 basic rules on a sheet of paper. He posted them on the gym wall. 1. The ball can be thrown in any direction with one or both hands. 2. The ball may be hit in any direction with one or 2 hands, but never with the fist. 3. A player cannot run with the ball. He must shoot it from the point where he catches it. 4. The ball must be held in or between the hands. 5. It is not allowed to charge, hold, push, or hit the opponent. 6. Hitting the ball with your fist is a foul. 7. 3 consecutive fouls by a team count as a point for the opposing team. 8. A point is scored when the ball is thrown or hit into the basket and remains there. 9. When the ball comes out, it is put back into play by the first person to touch it. 10. The referee judges the players and notes the fouls. 11. The referee judges the ball and decides when it is in play. 12. The game consists of 2 15-minute halves with a 5-minute rest period. 13. The team that scores the most points wins. Simple, clear, and essential. Naismith divided his class of 18 students into 2 teams of 9 players each. He gave them a soccer ball and explained the rules. The students were skeptical. Some giggled. It seemed too simple, almost childish. But Naismith insisted. The first game began. The players were clumsy and confused and made many mistakes. The players were not used to not being able to run with the ball. Their passes were imprecise. Many shots went off target. Then something happened. William R. Chase, one of the students, managed to throw the ball into the basket. It was the only basket of the game. The final score was 1-0. The enthusiasm was palpable, though. The students understood. There was something special about that game. It was new and challenging and required different skills. Above all, it was fun. One amusing detail was that every time someone scored, the game had to stop and someone had to climb a ladder to get the ball out of the basket. It took a few years before anyone thought to cut the bottom of the baskets. Over the next few weeks, the game quickly became popular in the school. Students began playing it voluntarily during their free time. In January 1892, less than a month after the first game, the rules were published in the school newspaper. This was the first official document on basketball. Students from other YMCAs read the article and wanted to try the game. The game spread with astonishing speed for several reasons. First, the YMCA was an international organization with offices around the world. Once they graduated, Springfield students would return to their towns and bring the new game with them. In just a few months, basketball was being played in dozens of American cities. Second, the rules were simple, and minimal equipment was needed. No special training or expensive gear was necessary. All you needed were 2 baskets and a ball, and you could play pretty much anywhere. Third, the game was inclusive. Unlike football, you didn't need to be big or strong. Players of different sizes could excel based on their skill, speed, or tactical intelligence. However, the game was also evolving rapidly. The original 13 rules were just the beginning. In 1893, backboards were introduced. During the early games, When the basket hung from the balcony, spectators sitting in the gallery would interfere with shots by trying to deflect the ball. The boards solved this problem. The official basketball was introduced in 1894. It was larger than a soccer ball and designed specifically for the new sport. The following year, fouls began to be penalized with free throws, adding a new strategic dimension. In 1896, the standard team size of 5 players per side was established. This made the game faster and smoother. Dribbling was not included in the original rules. Naismith had envisioned players standing still when they had the ball. However, players spontaneously began bouncing the ball to move, and this innovation was soon incorporated into the official rules. By the end of the 1800s, basketball had spread across North America. However, its global expansion was even more impressive. Just 2 years after its invention, in 1893, basketball was played in France. By 1894, it had reached China. By 1895, it had reached Brazil and Australia. The YMCA's worldwide network was the perfect vehicle for this meteoric spread. Women began playing almost immediately. Less than a year after the first men's game in 1892, Senda Berenson, a physical education teacher at Smith College, adapted the rules for her female students. Women's basketball was born. Universities embraced the new sport. The first varsity game was played in 1895. Rivalries developed rapidly, and college basketball became a cultural phenomenon, especially at universities in the Midwest and on the East Coast. In 1904, basketball was a demonstration sport at the St. Louis Olympics. Naismith attended and watched teams from different parts of the world play the game he had invented just 13 years earlier. However, not everything was easy. There was resistance, criticism, and problems. Some considered basketball too violent despite the rules against contact. Early matches were often rough, with many fouls and the occasional brawl. Others saw it as a frivolous distraction. Naismith had invented the game in a Christian context with the aim of character development. However, as the game became more competitive and popular, some feared that its educational purpose would be lost. There were also practical problems. There was no central authority to regulate the game. Different organizations used slightly different rules. It took time to fully standardize the sport. How did James Naismith feel about his game becoming a global phenomenon? Surprisingly, he did so in a humble and detached way. He never sought to profit from his invention. He did not patent the game, ask for royalties, or seek fame or fortune. For him, basketball was a means to an end, helping young people develop physically, mentally, and spiritually. In 1895, he left Springfield to continue his career elsewhere. He became a professor of physical education at the University of Kansas and coached the basketball team, though with limited success. He observed the evolution of his game with interest but also some concern. He was thrilled to see millions of people playing basketball around the world. However, he was concerned about the excessive emphasis on winning at all costs and unsportsmanlike behavior. In 1936, at age 75, Naismith received the greatest honor when basketball was included as an official Olympic sport for the first time at the Berlin Olympics. He was invited to perform the opening tip-off of the first Olympic match. Just imagine the emotion of the inventor of a sport seeing his game become Olympic while he was still alive. 21 nations participated in the basketball tournament at those Olympics. The United States won the gold medal, defeating Canada in the final match. With tears in his eyes, Naismith presented the medals. He passed away 2 years later, in 1939, at the age of 78. Although he didn't live to see basketball become the global phenomenon it is today, he saw enough to know that his invention had changed the world. Today, over 130 years after the first awkward peach basket game, basketball has become one of the world's most popular sports. It is estimated that over 450 million people regularly play the sport. It is the second most popular sport after soccer. It is played in more than 200 countries. Founded in 1946, the NBA has become one of the richest and most influential sports leagues on the planet. Its players are global icons, even among those who don't follow the sport. However, perhaps basketball's greatest legacy is its accessibility. Boys and girls play basketball in every corner of the world. All you need is a ball, a basket, and a love of the game. It's exactly as Naismith had imagined. The story of how basketball was born is extraordinary because it shows how human ingenuity and creativity can flourish under pressure. James Naismith wasn't a visionary genius who dreamed of revolutionizing sports worldwide. He was a practical teacher who needed to solve an immediate problem: how to keep his bored students busy during the winter. However, he approached the problem intelligently and methodically, with a deep understanding of human nature. He considered the fundamental principles. He designed with a purpose. He created something simple yet profound. The result was something that has lasted over a century and touched billions of lives. The next time you see a basketball hoop, remember those 2 peach baskets in a Massachusetts gym in 1891. Remember James Naismith and his desire to make winter more bearable for his students. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed the story, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments, what is your best memory related to basketball?